Welcome to this episode of the Vegan Family Podcast. I'm very excited to have Andy Nevers on, who is not only a vegan dad, but also runs two companies, the Green Body brand and the Plantarion company. So we'll talk about that and how you do that with children and two companies and trying to make the world a better place. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm always excited for every opportunity to, talk veganism, talk about the stuff that I'm working on. And, I wouldn't consider myself a vegan activist, but I see the work that I do as a great way of sort of, making a difference, making an impact. And so I'm really excited to be here, and I'm happy that you gave me the invitation to join you. And of course, being a vegan dad as well, that's important because we'll get into the nitty gritty of that part. But, that's a work in progress.
Yeah. And here at Animal Outlook, I think we like to take a very big view, very broad view of what an activist is, because I think especially in this world where, the interest in veganism and animal issues has really taken off so much, there's so many things you can be doing in your life that are not like full-time sort of flag-waving activism, but you are literally wearing a t-shirt that says runs on veggies from your company right now. So I think that counts. I think that makes you a vegan activist just by itself.
Yeah, and I didn't set out to do, I should say, I didn't set out to, be an activist or create t-shirts. Really, I started out on the tech side. Which is the Plantarion company that you mentioned before. And the Green Body brand, the clothing side, just sort of, morphed out of Plantarion. But I wanted to wear Runs on Veggies today because it's actually my favorite design that we've created so far. It's the reason I like Runs on Veggies because before Runs on Veggies came along, a concept called Vegan Boss was actually my favorite. But there's this sort of stigma around veganism. And, every time I wear one of our clothing that says vegan on it, I almost feel like I need to brace myself for attacks in the public. I see people kind of giving me the side eye and those kind of things. Whereas some people are genuinely curious. They want to know what veganism is, what it's about. And that's part of why I'm fired up about Green Body brand. I see it as an opportunity to, sort of engage with people more. And I love that a lot of people who are not vegan are able to wear the Runs on Veggies because, it sort of signal a healthy lifestyle, which is sort of where I see a lot of people. They're very curious, very interested in veganism, but they're not quite there yet. Which I try to reserve judgment as much as possible. Certainly I want to give people the nudge, like, go ahead, you can do it. It's really, especially today, it's really not that hard to go vegan. But yeah, I'm really excited about the opportunity to create messaging and put it on t-shirts as a way of really inspiring and evoking change in people's lives, and knowing that the change is not really the mission is not really for profit. The mission really is to kind of create a global community of just awareness and people just being excited about the benefit of living healthy. So it's all exciting work.
Yeah, what I really like about that whole perspective and about the style of your shirts and stuff is exactly what you said about people who are so curious, but they might not be there yet. Like a lot of people come to this because they want to be healthier, and then they learn about the animals. I mean, here at Animal Outlook, that's sort of our heart and soul is, really trying to raise awareness about the animal issues and help animals and kind of make it a mainstream cultural topic. But as you said, I think it's a topic that's tough to talk to people about if you just kind of give them the facts, the really difficult facts. And I think really having that attitude of like, yeah, you can do it. Like, this is so fun and this is so, interesting to engage in and stuff. I really like the designs. Like, I bought the vegan daddy one for my husband. I just thought that was so funny for Father's Day. Like, that whole like, be a little silly, be
Right.
kind of friendly. Like, I think that whole attitude really is going to bring more people into these conversations and make more people willing to, kind of wear it out in the world. And, I sort of joke about a lot of vegans like being, not comfortable sort of being out as a vegan, and I think these kinds of designs, which are like, you show that you're like pretty harmless and also have a sense of humor,
Right.
I think are really fun. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all people, right? And I know my personal story is that I've only been vegan for about 4 years, so it's not like veganism is, a thing that I've always been doing. And I discovered veganism, and I'm really happy I did. And I know there are a lot of people out there that are just kind of waiting to discover veganism, just like I did. And so when we started out Green Body Brand, though, we were coming up with a whole bunch of like vegan designs, and it was just like all vegan designs. And we have these, these discussions on our team because I try to give everyone on our team a voice, so that way we're maximizing creativity and we're really just kind of thinking outside the box. And I remember someone said, well, if we really want to get other people to be vegan, how are we going to do that if all of our clothing says vegan on it? And that was sort of an aha moment where we said, okay, well, that's not really what we're about. We definitely want to include, as a matter of fact, inclusivity is a major sort of cornerstone of our operation here at Green Body Brand. And so from there, it's where it started. We said, okay, we're going to branch out and we're going to have, things that sort of lean to the vegan movement, but not explicitly state vegan on it. And this is not purely to try to, generate more sales. It's really to sort of pull people into the discussion, like you mentioned earlier, and have people just feel comfortable having a dialogue about, veganism, because, I think we achieve more success in the vegan space by, sort of removing that stigma of, and I really don't know the history of where it came from, why people hate the word vegan so much. But I want to be a part of the change of, allowing people to see veganism as not a threat, not a attack on their way of life, but more of a, educational movement that says that when you go vegan, and like you said before, a lot of us come into veganism because we heard it's a healthy diet, right? And so people get pulled in from that perspective a lot. But then you come in just like I did, and I recognize that, okay, so veganism may help me to be healthier, but it also helped me to save the planet and save animals. And I said, this is a win all around. So why would I ever not, if you don't want to call it vegan, call it whatever you want, but why would I ever want to not live this way? And so that's kind of where it started for me. And, I could think back to times when I used to talk with vegans, and I saw people as vegans. They were sort of like outsiders to me. I used to see people protesting, we're going to the circus and there's folks, standing out there protesting. I was like, oh, this is just silly. The animals are fine, I'm sure. And so now, it's like this awakening that we talk about in the vegan space. It's like, okay, we're not treating animals well. As a society, we're absolutely not doing that. But certainly, there is enough sort of noise to drown out the vegan, messaging. And so I really want to be a part of the voice of saying, stop the madness. Let's think for ourselves and really figure out what's going on. and be a part of a solution for some of the problems that we have today.
Yeah, I really like the idea of kind of anchoring it as an inclusivity thing. I think that we don't get anywhere in terms of mainstreaming vegan behavior, vegan values, like that kind of feeling of positivity around it, like, hey, this is an opportunity to make your life better, if we don't really recognize people for who they are, and not just kind of hope that they all conform to one sort of expectation, right? Like, we are doing the work that we're doing because we want to sort of celebrate life, right? And so that includes human life and our differences, and kind of
Right.
inclusivity is a big part of that. And I think being able to engage with people in a way that doesn't necessarily doesn't water down what we're saying, right? Like, for a lot of people, like, the word vegan is very positive, and we're getting better let's say surveys and data on that, right? Like, it's growing, the movement is growing. But I think recognizing that sense of people not necessarily feeling like they know how they can get in, like, especially with you being relatively new vegan and saying, well, I used to think like these people were just kind of outsiders, right? Like, now will I be an outsider if I go that route? Like, I think being able to have a certain amount of kind of respect for that, and like working with it instead of working against it, I think is really important if you're going to be effective as as an advocate for animals, and kind of the human animal being part of that,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think we win a lot more if we just kind of humanize the topic and really sort of break it down in a way that is very digestible for everyone, and knowing that everybody's different, and what's going to really appeal and resonate with certain people, you have to take a slightly different approach with others. And I see that, I see that in the sales of our apparel today. Some people that are vegan, strictly buy the vegan stuff, whereas some people who are still vegan, are buying lesser of the straightforward vegan messaging, and buying things like Ron's on Veggies and quite a few others that we have. So it really comes down to you making sure that people feel comfortable, but there is, in my opinion, a sense of urgency in terms of really wanting to create change, because we talk about climate awareness, and we talk about sort of depleting our resources at a pace that is not sustainable, and so we really just want to make sure that we're getting that message across to people to say, hey, this is not marketing. As a matter of fact, the way you live now was caused through marketing. This is more of sort of an awakening, and really trying to get you to really understand for yourself what's truly going on. Yeah.
I mean, I think I don't know. I mean, I think people are starting to get it. I think it's just a question of how to bring that together in your life. And I'll ask you about that in a minute. But real quick, I want to say, because you kind of mentioned this before, this your sort of vision for your business is not just the kind of profit loss usual business model, right? Like, you're trying to have some tangible impact in terms of helping animals and promoting veganism. And I think it's very cool. We talked about having a Animal Outlook benefit t-shirt, and I'm happy to report that we've got some cool ideas from some of our staff that I can't wait to show you and see what you think.
Yeah.
But yeah, stay tuned for everyone watching this or listening to this. Stay tuned to see if some really fun and enticing t-shirt ideas come out soon. That would benefit Animal Outlook. So that's great. It's really fun.
I have to say, probably the most exciting part of creating t-shirts, at least for me, is really coming up with the concepts. And we get sort of inundated with just a lot of ideas from people out in the public, and we want to continue to welcome that from folks, because even if we don't take the ideas that we get, exactly, it sort of inspire other ideas of what people are talking about. And I get so many people also inbox me with ideas, and they say, hey, I'm looking at your website and I don't see I don't see one of the latest ones that we're coming out with. What is it? Let me see if I can remember. If you give me 1 second, I'll tell you exactly what it is, because I don't want to miss out on this opportunity to share something that's coming and going live. But animal liberation, right? So that's of course a very important concept, and we didn't have one of those until now. I just looked at the design; it hasn't gone live yet. But that was inspired by people out in the community saying, you guys really should have this concept, because they love our designs, but they want to see more of a variety. And I'm excited to see what you guys came up with. That's the fun part, really.
I hope you like it.
Yeah. And I hope that people that are coming up with ideas understand, sort of the design aspects of things. And maybe we don't want to have too many words on a single shirt. Sometimes that drowned out the messaging. Because it's not like you're a billboard. People are not going to just stop and
yeah, you don't want like a manifesto on your shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it's fun. We have a lot of fun on the team, just coming up with concepts, and people really enjoy that part of it.
Well, I think it would be really fun for the listeners of this podcast to ask their kids for some ideas, since you're soliciting input from the public. I think vegan kids would be the best creators of new t-shirt design ideas.
Yeah, and we actually have a shirt for kids too, so that would be awesome. And in terms of creativity, I think we would all agree that the younger we are, the more creative our minds are. So
I had a fun conversation with my own kids about it. They had some really wild ideas, but yeah, I mean, so as always, people can submit comments, questions, cute kid quotes, audio, video files, and now t-shirt ideas to veganfamily@trivedge.com. Or you can go directly over to Andy at Greenbody Brand and send him some ideas. So I wanted to ask you real quickly before we switch over to talking just more about kids and family, to talk a little bit about what drove the Plantarion concept, because this is very sort of intersects nicely with the idea of like wanting to encourage people, wanting to help people out, and kind of, basically help people become vegan and stay vegan. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, so Plantarion was the first company that I created when I went vegan. And I had a startup before Plantarion that didn't really, got to full success in terms of raising investment and all. But we were relatively successful with that first technology startup. And so as I became vegan, I had the experience of creating technology startups. And when I discovered veganism, it was just such a shocker for me that more people weren't aware of this lifestyle and what it really meant. My entire life, I thought I knew what veganism meant until I became vegan and understood what it really was all about. And so I started searching my mind, thinking, how can I help this movement? Because now, I was the one that started, the person that started talking with my family about going vegan, and and some of them started avoiding me, but that's okay, because they can't get away.
All new vegans do this,
right?
And just don't know.
Yeah, and so I wanted to find just a way to really help and be a part of the conversation, and really be very effective and impactful in helping people. And so a couple things happened at the early time of my sort of going vegan. A lot of people I was sort of coming across were saying that, hey, I was vegan for a certain amount of time, but it was so difficult, so challenging that I gave it up. And that was, of course, very disappointing to me that, as a brand new vegan that's all fired up about the lifestyle, it was disappointing to hear so many people saying that. And so the only thing that I could think about at the time is like, okay, so you're not vegan now, and I want you to be vegan again. And then there was, for me personally, I never really had a passion for being in the kitchen. Of course, I know how to make food. But I know I talked to a lot of friends who are very passionate about cooking, and that's just their thing. That wasn't it for me. And I noticed when I went vegan initially, I was making a lot of my own food. And for me, making food is very time consuming because, I'm not a master at it. And especially sort of making food in a different way, as in vegan food. It just required more time and attention and grocery shopping and stuff like that, that I was never really big on. And so I was just kind of thinking about all of this, and an idea kind of came to mind that said, well, what if you could have an app that you can just, open the app and you can find vegan chefs? And that was sort of a solution for me. I wanted vegan chefs in my area to make vegan food, and they could be professional chefs, they could be freelancers. I don't care, as long as they make good vegan food. I will pay. And so I had this idea, and I was like, well, certainly if I feel this way, there has to be other people who feel this way. And so we set out to create an app strictly focusing on chefs. But it wasn't long before I recognized that the chef aspect really solved, a subset of the pain point of going vegan. But what about sort of the educational aspect of it? Some people are lifestyle coach, vegan lifestyle coaches. Some people are fitness trainer. And so if you could imagine working with a personal trainer who's not vegan, sort of what kind of nutritional advice might you get from a trainer? So I realized that we needed to expand the service offering. And so now Plantarion is, signing up vegan chefs, nutritionists, health coaches, fitness trainers, just all those services that can help you to transition to veganism. And then once you're transitioned over and you're living this new lifestyle, you can partner with folks that will sustain your lifestyle of being vegan. And so that's what Plantarion is today. And we're very excited about it. It's a lot more challenging to build Plantarion than it is to create Green Body Brand. There's a lot of engineering and designing work that goes into that. And several hours of just coding away. But it's very important. And we're continuing to build.
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of things that you're hitting on with the Plantarion concept that are really supported in some of the social science on behavior change. One of the big things that comes up in some of the studies and theories about this is the importance for people who are what they call extrinsically motivated, meaning like, I haven't really put it in my heart yet. I haven't decided that I'm committed to forever being a vegan, right? Which of course, there's a million things in each of us, each of our lives that we could say that's that thing, right? Like, I like art, right? But I'm not going to just commit myself to becoming a professional painter. You know what I mean?
Right.
Unless I had someone who was around me that could say, yeah, let's do this. I'm going to show you what you need to do. I'm going to help you through, and kind of doing that sort of cheerleading role. And that's really important. So that kind of encouragement and increasing the person's confidence within themselves, and also providing community. So making it feel like you're not the only person who's doing this is really important. So I think that what you're describing really hits on a number of those concepts that are kind of proven strategies for people to start something new and to stick with it. And that really, of course, is a big challenge with people who newly become vegan and then people who leave. But if they had that sense of hey, I can do this, and that sense of community where you're really getting practical help, I think you really increase everybody's happiness and people stay vegan.
Yeah. No, I really love that analogy that you used there. And I totally agree. And I wasn't thinking exactly that way, but what I was thinking when I was creating Plantarion initially was when I started out, I sort of just, threw myself out there in the vegan community, and I connected with a lot of friends, some people that, are well known here in the DC area as vegan and vegan advocates and service providers providing transitional and sustainment services. As a matter of fact, that's how I discovered that this was actually a thing, that there are people out there that provide these services. And so for me, I thought to myself, I said, well, I've never been shy about, going out and networking. But then there are people who are, perhaps very introverted, and they just, they would rather pay for the services, as well as there are people who are busy focusing on their career. And they're not like me that just likes to go out to events and, hang out and talk to vegans. So I saw it as just a way to give people sort of at their fingertips information that they can really benefit from. And that was sort of my thinking, which is similar to what you were describing there with, sort of that support system, if you will. With Plantarion.
Yeah, that sense of community. I think that's a really valuable resource for people to have. Okay, so let's talk about kids and parenting. So tell us how many kids you have, how old they are, and are they vegan? How long?
Yeah, no. So I have a daughter. She's 14, and she is not vegan. She's sort of at that phase now, which, because she's my only daughter, teenager. I'm not sure. Every day I wake up, I think I'm not sure what to expect. But there's this like rebellion against veganism, and it's like I feel like the more I try to push it on her, it's the less successful I'm going to be. And so
what kind of conversations do you have? Like, how does it go? Because I bet this is very relatable for people listening.
Absolutely. So at the start, when I discovered veganism and I went vegan, and I said, hey, for me, it was just sort of, hey, I'm vegan now. So not exactly like you're going to have to be vegan, but, the expectation was sort of there, like, she wasn't going to push back on this because, my daughter is very smart, and, she's smarter than me, I would say. And so I figured that, as long as I give her the information, that she was going to just gravitate to veganism, and it was going to just be a piece of cake. But I had to watch the documentaries that I saw on Netflix, and it was like torture for her. It was like, oh, why am I watching these again?
Were these the health ones?
Right. Yeah. So
got into it, right? Okay.
What the Health and Forks Over Knives. And I wanted her to watch some more, but after getting through those two, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to stop here, because she's literally just really pushing back, and I was afraid that I was doing more harm than good. And so it's sort of been an uphill battle from there. But certainly, fast forward to 4 years later, I can see where, she's definitely more open to the idea. She tries a lot more of my vegan food, and she's like, this is good, but sort of like, I don't want it to be good, I don't want to be trapped in your lifestyle. And so that's sort of where we are today, where, she's still sort of pushing back, but she's come a long way into just being a lot more open. And I think for her too, at the start, she probably thought, I know she thought that this was going to be a temporary thing for me. And so she just needed to wait it out. But she realized now that I'm building companies about it. And so, it's not going anywhere. And so she's like, oh, I got to figure out how I'm going to, sort of live with him and not be vegan.
Yeah, I think it's hard, especially around that age. That's actually around the age that I went vegetarian when I was a kid, but my parents were like completely, I had a lot of siblings, so they were like, we're not cooking you extra food. They had all these questions for me about, well, what about like health, and what about this and whatever, but there was no internet. So I had to like go to the library. I had to like drag my little brother along because there's like nobody to watch him, and like do all this research and stuff. So I think until you kind of get to that point where you find that hook, that thing that brings you in, it's hard to just sort of receive information. Like we're not just sort of empty buckets to like download information into, you know?
Yeah.
So whatever it is that I think might engage her, interest her, might be like a little different than health. I've said this on the podcast before. I remember as a kid, like I didn't think health was like a thing for me as a kid. Like I thought that was just something that would be an issue when I got old.
Right.
You know?
I think we all probably have been there where, you know, we're young, we're active, and, you know, we feel invincible. And so we're like, oh, old people get sick, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that she's probably a little bit past that phase, my daughter. But she's definitely not really ready to fully embrace the lifestyle. And I'm really hoping that I could work on her before she head off to college, so that way, you know, by the time she's out of the house, you know, I would have done my job in terms of converting her fully.
Well, you might be planting the seeds, right? Like
Right.
I think part of it is like, who is the message coming from?
Yeah.
Like, if it's just like your dad, like, you know, doesn't matter as much as if it's your peers or something. But I do think, you know, what's interesting about that age is like, that's the age that everyone is trying to figure out like who they are. What does it mean if they make certain choices and kind of how that all works? I think what's really fun for me to think about in raising vegan kids is like, what rituals or traditions or sort of family culture things do I like that, you know, I see elsewhere or I grew up with that I want to make part of our life in a vegan way, right? Whether those are certain dishes or like, you know, I love like now like taking them to animal sanctuaries. We're going to go to one over the weekend. Like that's really fun. I got this app. I think I've said this before actually too. The Seek app, which is like it's like a database of plants and animals. So like we went out in the woods yesterday and we're finding like wild like mushrooms, and I'm like using my app to see like what kind of mushrooms are and stuff. Like that's not like overtly vegan, but that's like little sort of tradition things,
Right,
that kind of add up to like almost like that way of looking at the world. You know, like I grew up in a family, like my parents were very different from me politically. Like they're still not vegan. My sister was vegetarian and kind of has gone off and on over the years. But like I think now about a couple of things here and there, like my dad said when I was a kid, that sort of planted that seed for me that I didn't really realize at the time. Like I grew up in Chicago, it was really cold. Like he would see like a bird outside in the winter and be like, wow, that's like a really brutal winter. That bird's like, you know, it's kind of amazing. That's like handling the cold. Can you imagine like being out there and being able to survive the winter, right? Like that's like a, you know, it's a pretty uncontroversial statement, right? But it's like something that sort of sat with me as like, oh yeah, like animals are amazing. You know,
absolutely.
like animals can do things that people like definitely cannot do, and they have their own sort of lives and their own reasons of being. You know, and like it, you know, even though those are all like sort of pieces I picked up, I love now as a parent kind of putting them all together and making that something that we kind of practice in our lives and figure out how the kids are thinking and stuff. It's like, you know, so do you have any like little traditions or rituals or anything that you've kind of done with your daughter, even if they're not like overtly vegan, but kind of like allow you to be part of that family culture that's like in line with those values?
Yeah, well, maybe not as ongoing as yours, but one thing that I do now is that it used to be where, you know, if she didn't want to have her veggies or something like that, it was like, oh, that's okay. I mean, I don't even want my veggies. So, but now it's like, you know, I try to make sure that although she's not always eating a vegan meal, I try to at least incorporate some, you know, vegan food on our plate. And of course, you know, sort of being around me all the time, she asks questions now, you know, about different things. And you know, she think like I'm a walking vegan encyclopedia. So anything that's vegan, she wants to come and ask me. She even asked me like, you know, is it true that this celebrity is a vegan? I don't even know who the celebrity is.
That's so cute though. That's like so sweet of her.
And so, but you know, back to your point of planting seeds, I do think that I am planting seeds for her. You know, I worry some days if it's going to be enough. But you know, it's sort of, you know, wait and see. that we're doing now. But
yeah, don't forget, like, you know, the generation that we grew up in is totally different in terms of how, you know, they will grow up in a world that's much more open to veganism, much easier to eat vegan, you know, like, and enter it from so many different places. Like, it's a social justice issue, it's an environment issue, it's a health issue, you know, it's like all of these kind of ways in. It's just a question of how to do that. And then I also feel like sometimes when it's something like, you know, getting them to eat their vegetables or whatever, which even vegan kids sometimes wonder. I have one kid who will eat absolutely anything. He loves food. He loves cooking food. He loves thinking about food. He's just so happy about food as long as it's vegan. He loves to, like, he's literally a kid who will, like, bake bread and then go walking down the street and, like, give his bread to the neighbors and stuff. Just,
that's so adorable.
my other kid is like a more sort of typical kid in that, like, you know, he doesn't always want to eat his greens or whatever. But like the other day, he went with some of our other family to an amusement park, and he was like a quarter of an inch too short to get on one of the big roller coasters. So ever since then, we've been having like kale, like we had garlicky kale like a couple nights ago. And then we had like some other green thing yesterday. And I was like, don't forget, like, if you want to grow, to get onto that ride, like, you need to green. And it's like, okay, you know, so sometimes it's just like finding what's their thing that, like, you know, and making it work for them. Doesn't have to be some sort of profound, elegant, ethical thing. It can just be as much as fun as wanting to ride the Joker roller coaster, you know?
No, that is super cool. And, you know, the thing that I could say that relates to that is I often think back to the days when, you know, I was encouraging my daughter to eat meat, you know, thinking that I was actually doing a good thing. And so now I feel bad because I'm trying to do the opposite. And I'm like, but I am the one that made you the way you are. You know? And now I'm trying to get you to flip sides. And she's like, well, no, I'm older now and I can think for myself.
Yes, exactly. She's now a full-blown person. Well, it's funny because, you know, it's just part of the natural progression of things as kids get older and they kind of individuate. And then you're evolving at the same time, and you're trying to be like, wait, let's go back and start over. And she's like, no, I'm off on my own thing. Like, I'm a person.
Right.
You know, so you got to relate to them as a person, you know?
Yeah. And then she would have to justify, you know, sort of going vegan to her friends, and her friends are like everything to her. But a point that you made earlier about sort of, you know, non-parents talking to kids about vegan, I see where she sort of take the conversation a little bit more seriously when someone else other than me, you know, is talking to her about veganism. That's when she really listened and she asked questions, and, you know, it's like she's really there and she's getting the information. So I love to bring her around my vegan friends. They could, you know, you could talk to her, and it hasn't really been all that often since the pandemic, but now that we're coming out of that, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more opportunities to bring her around folks, to have those discussions.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, it was a friend of mine in grade school, and she had gotten like a PETA magazine, and I remember us like hiding it from our teachers and stuff. And there was this like display that was kind of in like sort of the, you know, more snarky like PETA style, of like what's in a hot dog, and it was like lips and tongues and like, you know, gross stuff, whatever. And our teacher caught us looking at it, and we're like, oh my God. And he's like, well, you want to put that up on the bulletin board? And we're like, yes. So we like put it up on the board in the class. And that felt exactly like what you're saying. Like, hey, there's some other person, like some adult who's like actually getting, you know, what we're into and what we're doing. And that was so different from like anybody right in our immediate circles, or a friend or just a family member or whatever. It felt like so validating to be like, yeah, this adult thinks it's cool to be like as subversive about this as we do.
Yeah. And then your parents would make the same exact suggestion, and you're like, oh, why would anyone want to see this on a bulletin board? You know?
Yeah, like, oh, come on. Right? And so we're like, they're just there, like, you know, they're just your parents or whatever.
Right.
It's funny. But I do think like that age, you know, the social sort of like you're really figuring out who you are at that time. And it's so hard to kind of wrap your mind around like do you want to stand up for somebody or something? What will that mean in terms of like these bigger questions, these, you know, questions that films and novels and whatever are about, right? About like, are you going to conform or are you going to like sort of advance progress? Like this is a perfect issue to like really start thinking about that through, you know?
No, and we have these kind of discussions, and you know, I think back to a lot of times when I'm talking with my daughter. I think back to when I was her age or young, you know, around that time frame, and just how I would just rebel just for the sake of rebelling. And so I see a lot of that happening with her, where she knows that what I'm telling her makes sense, and her counter arguments are usually just, you know, not really as strong as when she would, you know, sort of debate or argue for something else. It's just sort of like, well, I'm going to eat this way because, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, like, you know, you kind of have your job as a parent is to kind of like help them become their own fully developed human being. You know, it's not like to just be like, do what I say, you know. And I think, I mean, it's nice. My kids are little, so we haven't hit teenage years yet, so I don't know how that will go. But I do feel like for both of mine, they really feel empowered by, you know, being vegan and by helping animals. And we actually have some neighbors whose kids are vegan, and they're always like, you know, talking about it and stuff with them. And you know, what's really sort of surprised me with they're all little. Like my older one is 7, my younger one is 5, and then the neighbor kids are 4 and 6. So listening to all of them process this topic, because it's a complicated topic. There's a lot of like death involved, you know, in terms of what's going on. It's really interesting to see how much the individual kind of personalities or like sort of, you know, development of the kid is like so on display in terms of how they process it, right? Like my son who wants to go on the roller coaster is also the one who thinks of himself as a superhero for animals, right? Like, because he just maps that on, like, that's so cool. Like, okay, he's going to go and like save the animals, right? My one who, you know, is the food kid is much more like, you know, why do people eat meat though? Like, but why? Why can't they just like leave the animals alone? Like, what's so hard about that? You know, like he has a more like sort of philosophical way of looking at it and less of like the action, like I will solve this problem way of looking at it. Just so dependent on their personalities. And I feel like, you know, this is just sort of a small example, but I feel like that's how we as like, you know, good mentors, good parents, good activists, like have to look at things, right? Like, who are these people that we're talking about? Who are they as individuals? You know, and how will this actually like resonate with them? You know,
that's such a great point. And I always get jealous of people who have younger kids that are vegan, because I just feel like, you know, if you get them to go vegan at such a young age, it's gonna stay with them. And even if they mess up in the future, as a matter of fact, I've talked to people who have gone down that path of, you know, oh, when I was in college, you know, I messed up for a few years, but my body, I just started getting sick, and you know, I had to go back to being vegan. And so, you know, it's just it's just ingrained in them better, you know, and it's going to stay with them, and they're so cute to talk about veganism. We almost should have a podcast where it's narrated by kids.
I know. Well, I actually sometimes will put little clips of kids. So again, anyone who has like cute kid quotes, that's actually my biggest soft spot. Like hearing kids talk about stuff, especially, you know, about big topics that like adults struggle with, but they're like really processing through them. And, you know, of course, veganism is like one of the big, you know, I remember talking with my younger one who was 4 at the time about the pandemic and like, you know, talking about how like viruses come from animals and like it was pretty complicated, right? Like at the time we were all trying to figure out like how do viruses happen and stuff, and him just like, well, like, you know, if we were all vegan and people stopped killing animals, like, you know, I could like there'd be no coronavirus is so stupid, and I would get to play with my friend Casey. You know?
Like, you know, it's just a perfect explanation. and they don't have all of this baggage that we develop as we get older. So everything for them is pretty straightforward, which really is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, and they kind of just see right through it, and are able to just tell you, look, it's not that complicated. You know, you either choose to eat animals or you choose not to. Um, and if you choose not to, then you'll stay healthy. The animals won't suffer, and we won't have pandemics. The end. You know.
Yeah. I think that's a great transition point. I'll just say before we wrap up, is there anything that you want to say, like a little, you know, recipe or tradition or something that, you know, you kind of feel like, you know, as a vegan parent, you really want to kind of impart on your kid, or it's something fun that you guys do together just to close out, like a little tip for people who are interested in being vegan or have non-vegan and vegan people in their family? Like, you know, how do you sort of, what's your favorite thing to bring to the table, literally or metaphorically?
You know, I love to just sort of remind people that are vegan, to think about the time when they're not vegan as they approach, you know, non-vegan folks, and trying to have a conversation. Or in reverse, a lot of times non-vegan people will approach you because, you know, if you're wearing a t-shirt, if you're buying certain things at the grocery store, as you know, people will come up to you and say, hey, I noticed you're buying all vegetables. Are you vegan? And I'm like, oh, stalker. But you know, it's just to, you know, sort of put yourself back at that time when you didn't have the information that you have today, and how to really communicate with folks that are not vegan, to help them to understand and see, you know, veganism in a more positive light. Because I don't know where it started, where veganism sort of take on this negative connotation, but we really need to change that, and get more people to feel like vegans are not, you know, we're not a cult. You know, we're ordinary people that just is choosing to live a lifestyle that we think is better for the planet, our health, and animals. There it is.
Yes, very good. Yeah, and it's like we like eating vegan food, right? It's not like, you know, I think that's a big misperception too, that people think like we're somehow sacrificing something. And it's not about like trying to make everybody the same, right? It's about everybody still being themselves, just being kind of a better version, right? Like a happier version, a healthier version, you know, sort of more compassionate. And I think that's where, you know, if we really focus on that, like we will make the vegan issue a mainstream issue.
Yeah.
You know, and make people and animals sort of better for it all around.
Yeah, and I see it on social media. A lot of people make food that you know, sometimes I question it. I'm like, is that chicken? You know, it's, you know, because the food now is sort of, the vegan food has, and again, I don't want to talk like I've been vegan for 20 years, but even as I've been vegan for just about 4 years or so, I've seen where, you know, people are getting more creative with vegan food, and it's just looking a lot more like the food that we grew up eating, except it's not. Yes. You know, it's all plant-based. So I think that we just, you know, we have a lot of work to do. You know, people who are in the space to sort of, you know, get to others and help them understand. You know, and just keep going.
Yeah. Feed your friends vegan food. That's the takeaway.
Yeah. Watch their reaction when you tell them that it's vegan food.
Wait till they're like most of it though before you tell them.
Yeah. It's hey, yeah. So you thought that was chicken, right? It tastes really good, but no, it was vegan food.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I'm really glad that you agreed to do this podcast. I can't wait to send you some designs and see them come to life for the Animal Outlook t-shirt. Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, I look forward to seeing the designs that you guys came up with, and just kind of working with Animal Outlook in general moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.